Oh. also a volunteer staff member now for the CADC.
Is he here for you?
Can everyone on the Zoom hear us okay? Hi, Carrie. Hi, Linda. We're going through some technical difficulties, so we're gonna try and wing it, but just put in the chat if you have any trouble hearing. All right, well, a couple of quick updates about the club. I think most of you have paid your dues. If not, Magali has a link. Dues are really important. It's how we pay for meeting space. It's how we pay for, basically operational thing, our Zoom subscription, things like that. It's kind of like the organizational cost of the club. And it's not a lot of money. It's, $25. But if you can't afford that right now, it's totally fine. You can still be a member. Just let us know. But yeah, please get those in, because another thing is it's your eligibility for club endorsements. So if you want to show the Democratic Party who you want your leaders to be, only people who come to a meeting or pay their dues are eligible to vote. So
Tell them the enormous price that we charge for membership, 100 and what was it?
Yeah. Our membership is starting 15 for seniors, 25 for individual, and 35 for like if you and your partner want to have a family membership, or you and your child want to have a family membership. All right, so one of the things we're also trying to do this year is a lot. Well, actually, I'm going to run through a couple upcoming events. On Thursday, the 19th, our Congresswoman is going to be hosting a town hall over in Oakland. We can send the link after this to RSVP. It's a great opportunity to ask her questions, hear an update for her on things that are happening in Washington, D.C. As Zach may have mentioned, the 21st and 22nd is the California Democratic Party Endorsement Conference over in San Francisco. It's where all the primary candidates are going to be vying for the party's endorsement heading into the primary. So a lot of you know this, but there are delegates who are elected and who are appointed to represent us in Alameda. I'm one, Zach's one. I think we have about 4 or 5, and Michelle Pryor is one, our council member. But if you want to go and just volunteer or be an observer, let us know, because we can make arrangements for you to do that. All the candidates will be there speaking. And it's, I don't know, it's kind of fun and interesting.
Where's that going to be located?
It's at the Moscone Center in San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah. As Joyce mentioned, February 28th, Saturday, postcard writing at her house. I have been to a Joyce Mercado postcarding party. They are excellent and fun. There is bubble water and wine and snacks and good company. So talk to Joyce if you have any interest in attending. If you can't be there in person, she also puts together great porch packets that you can take home and just write them in your own time. And then our next meeting is March 11th. Lastly, if anyone is getting the itch on flipping the house work, some of that is happening right now in districts outside of ours. There's a lot of opportunities. So if you go to mobilize.us/cademza, and we'll have this link in the recap after this. You can sign up for door knocking in neighboring districts that we need to flip, or doing phone banking as well. Because we do need to flip those 5 house seats that we just fought to get. All right, now let's see if I can.
Where do you want us to register for any of those? Online?
Yes, so there's a link. It's all coordinated through the state party. So yeah, there should be a link in the like we'll put it on our website, or not our website, on our Facebook page, and send out an email about it. But yeah, they have all kinds of opportunities to, like, if you want to go to Bakersfield, if you want to go to Modesto, like it's just kind of whatever opportunity is most of interest and easiest for you to do. All right. As we mentioned, we want to do some work around committees. So if people are looking to roll up their sleeves, help us organize, there are at the moment 5 committees. One is campaign. We're going to be the ones who coordinate endorsements, do volunteer mobilization, canvassing, phone banking. So if campaign work is really of interest to you, come join the campaigns committee. Communications, those are the people going to be managing messaging and all our platforms, our website, our social, our email. If communications is something you do professionally or are interested in, can sign up there. Fundraising, we have to do a big haul on fundraising. So if you're interested in learning more about how we bring in money and how we spend it, or if you like planning parties and events and kind of engaging more with the elected officials, this would be a great committee to be on. Programs are the people who plan stuff like this, our month-to-month events. You identify topics, you find speakers, all the logistics of getting things here. And then, of course, membership, led by Magali. So that's a big thing on helping us bring in new people who want to get more involved in the party and the movement, but also making sure we're engaging and onboarding new people who come into the fold. So yes, there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of work and get involved. So if you know right away what you want to do, Magali's sign-up sheet is probably the best place just to write down what you want to do. And also feel free to just think about it. I know a lot of you are new, so I don't want to like overwhelm you. It's totally fine too if you just want to come to the meetings as well. All right. Yeah. Careful, you might get a phone call from Magali. All right, a quick treasurer's report update. So we filed our 460 is what we have to do as a I can't remember what the name of our type. No, it's like the type of committee it's like a standing political committee. So we got that filed. So we have about if you can see, we have about $2,000 in our membership fund. Those are costs that we use to, again, like put on these meetings and things and what your dues go toward. We did take a chunk out of membership to host our end of year celebration or the holiday party, but we also made a lot of that back on some of those new dues that came in as well. Federal, we have quite a bit of money because as some of you may remember from the last meeting, we wrote a very generous check to the Harris Walls campaign in 2024 that went unused. So it came back to us. So we have that to table either for the next presidential year or if we want to use it toward, it has to be used toward federal offices. So maybe the midterms isn't going to be the best place to do that unless we want to like invest in some of these flippable congressional races.
I can flip if you want to mute yours and then use the microphone.
Oh, okay.
Then everyone will be able to hear you and everyone on the Zoom will also.
Okay. State fund. That's what we spend on our state elected officials and our local offices to help city council, attorney general, assembly member get elected. We have about 2,700 in that count as well. federal, 5,800. Yeah. And just as an update, we spent about $1,700 from our state account toward Prop 50, which we got a good return on our investment of. And a bulk of that cost went toward the beautiful lawn signs that everyone saw around Alameda. All right, so that is the treasurer's report. If anyone has any questions about money and how we're spending it, let me know. Yes, yes. If we are doing campaign work for federal offices, which Congress and the US Senate fall under, yes, we could, if we wanted to use some of that money toward work in that, toward guests, things like that. Yes. All right. Are you guys ready to talk about the upcoming primary election? I am hoping that this can be very interactive because I don't have all the information on all these people who are running. I think we're just looking to engage and hear people's thoughts on what they're hearing about the state races. And if there's any candidates they're leaning toward and why. California Democratic Party is going to be voting on endorsements next weekend. So this is a good opportunity for us to have a discussion about it. June 2nd.
Oh my gosh.
Hello?
That's exactly what it does.
Yes, All Ride is an excellent local advocacy group. They organize all the local protests. They organize a lot of the local immigration advocacy and resources. They partner with us on supporting flippable congressional races. They partner closely with us on Prop 50. So really good partners. Yeah. All right, and anyone who wants to speak can come up and grab the mic. Let's start with the governor's race because everyone is running. So the key candidates at the moment are Javier Becerra, who is our former Attorney General, but also the Secretary of Health and Human Services under Biden. Matt Mahan, the mayor of San Jose, just entered the race about 2 weeks ago. Katie Porter, who was one of the first to declare, former congresswoman, current professor down at UC Irvine. Tom Steyer, environmental advocate / hedge fund founder. Yeah. Self-funded campaign. Tony Thurman, our state superintendent, Congressman Eric Swalwell, who represents Dublin, the Dublin area, is running. And Antonio Villagarosa, the former mayor of LA. This is his second time running for governor. And then, of course, Alameda's own Betty Yee. She is running. She is former state controller and vice chair of the DNC, and also a member of this club.
Only Democratic.
Any thoughts, questions?
Not a problem though, if there are way too many people running.
Yes. And here's why. So the latest polling that's coming out is showing one of the Republican candidates in first, one of the other Republican candidates in third. So the biggest thing is that too many Democrats are running. Yes. And they're all good choices, you know, for the most part. Yeah, with the polling right now, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, who claim to fame was that he came out very strongly against the mask mandates and said he was not going to enforce them. And third place is Steve Hilton, who is a Fox News commentator. Not from England. Doesn't even go here.
Who is in second place?
In the latest Eric Swalwell funded EMC research poll, Eric Swalwell is in second place. However, Katie Porter is not very far behind. Katie Porter is not very far behind. Yeah. It was someone else was missing. So you're talking about Fox LA. There was a Fox LA debate recently, and Katie Porter was not there, and Eric Swalwell was not there. There, yeah. Our regional direct, so the Democratic Party, we have regional directors who are kind of our link to the party, other than Zach, who's on the executive board. They have been hosting a series of forums. We have links to them in the email that went out yesterday and the newsletter that went out last week. They've done the finance offices and administrative offices. And on this Saturday at 9 a.m., they're doing governor. But they are recorded, so. And then they ask them a few questions. So it's not really a debate. It's more. You gotta come up to me tonight.
People on the, yeah, so how are other clubs sort of organizing and working together on candidates? So
It's interesting with Democratic clubs because you have intersectional clubs, location-based clubs, and the location-based ones like us they're diverse because they're not on a topic. And so it kind of depends on, are you one of those? And also, more often, say this quietly, is that sometimes the local Democrats don't always like the local Democratic representation in some cases. That does happen quite a bit. And so from an organizational standpoint, the intersectional clubs definitely get all together. Like all the young Democratic clubs are all going for the young people, obviously. And they will coordinate through the states like Young Democrat. We have a caucus and a council organization or organization for that kind of stuff. So under the caucus, they can't, but under the organization, they can. So there is some organization there. So us as a club, if we go through, we want to formally hold like endorsement votes, go through our processes in our charter, that then opens us up, especially the board, to then go like organize with other sort of groups to maybe pool funds. If we want to do our own organizational campaigns, join with them. We can also get funds. There's some funds set aside for like what we did with the United Democratic thing. There's a way to get the county funds, or not directly county funds, but like funds that would go to a region from Democratic organizations to fund local candidates. That's one method. So there's different mechanisms, but it all depends if we want to go through a formal nomination and then use that to power the board, or if not. There's so many ways to do it.
If we're thinking about door knocking and endorsing certain candidates or policies, one of the things that connecting the dots, right? If we're looking at the Democratic candidates for governor and what the policies or platforms are for the Republican candidates, how do we counteract that with like certain objection handling or bullets that people can respond to when they're knocking on doors? But I would assume, and maybe I'm wrong in assuming this, but a lot of these candidates have similar platforms. Right. And so that goes back to like the clubs. How are we distinguishing between which is the most winningest candidate potentially? Yeah. Right? In the sea of governor candidates.
And that's what I was wondering, right? Like, do you want ADC or do you want it?
Yeah. In my intersectional clubs, it immediately correct. Because they're the candidate that has the policy the next one. In my regional clubs. It's a split between communities.
Yeah, I was like, I'll put the speaker in front of the microphone or in front of the heater. So who are the YIMBYs, the housing activists going for? It's interesting that's a very interesting one because we had a governor that ran on a platform of pro housing, like I'm going to build 3 million homes, and so every YIMBY was like yes. This round, everybody is doing a slip service, and so we're in a like okay strategy mode because thankfully we're not a membership organization in the traditional sense. So we have a little bit more flexibility to be strategic and like who we want to give votes to all the time. And in those cases, it's not so much about who's the perfect candidate, but the most electable.
That's right.
And so we will discuss, then we'll put it up for a vote, but like it's after the discussion and we all kind of are on the same page. So right now it is Katie Porter, Eric Swallow, because they seem to be the front runners. And they're both giving us lip service. Their histories have not either one of them been perfect, but now they seem to come around and are making us promises. So we're like, okay. So as a club, could we get promises? I don't know. But
have another question. I'm sorry, I'm gonna talk.
No,
Very
please,
excited.
Oh, please.
How are we also thinking about like name recognition? Like, what is the data that we're gathering from like how people vote? Because a lot of the time it is like, oh, I know that name, so I'm gonna vote for them. Whether it is Planta or Villarosa or Porter or others. Like, what data are we collecting or polls that we see that say like this would be the most recognizable candidate on a ballot?
That's a good question.
I don't think it's done, I don't think there's polling done specifically on name recognition. But here's something we could do
Is in order to get the Democratic Party state party endorsement, they have to get 60% of the vote. All these candidates are on the ballot next weekend. So what if we wait and maybe figure out criteria for how we want to select them? Sounds like a great action item for the campaigns committee. And then maybe invite like 3 of the top candidates to come speak to the club and see what happens.
I think that'd be fantastic if we could do that.
Okay. Because by then I feel like coming out of the convention, the candidates that are not polling like in the teens are probably going to see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to hear Alysse.
Linda, were you trying to talk?
Also understand that one of the most effective ways of getting to know your candidate is through your TV ads. That takes a lot of money. So you also have to consider, does that particular candidate have that type of war chest, that's called, to go the long distance?
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, Steyer has been talking about how he's kind of focused in on the housing crisis in California. That seems to be his niche.
Yes.
Yeah. That's all. You're a delegate.
I bet.
So many phone calls. Yeah, so I think one of the tactics from a local Democratic is like a lot of them are going to focus on local elections. They're going to also the money. But on these like bigger ones, what can we do as a club? Like, what is our power? So I think part of this is that we can invite them because they want us to support them. So it's a chance to have a two-way conversation of like, okay, convince us. Well, even if the club doesn't endorse you, they'll want to come talk just to find supporters. But at the same time, it is a way to sort of get in. The other way we could do it is we can wait because like, as we're saying, no one's going to get that 60%, I don't think. It's going to end up probably being waiting until some candidates drop out or take sort of positions in somebody's cabinet, whatever, how it turns out. And then the e-board meeting will probably have a second round endorsement vote.
What's an e-board meeting?
So California Democratic process, we have regular conventions, and then in between regular conventions, there is the executive board that meets for business between the major conventions. So the whole body, made up of delegates like me and Meredith, go to the major conventions, but I'm also an e-board member. So it's meant to do the business between the major meetings, so you don't have to convene the whole convention, usually once or twice a year. We'll have 3 or 4 more e-board meetings in between. And it's meant to be like the quick business that we have to do, not typically supposed to be how we run the whole party. So that's actually how things politically turn out. We'll defer things to e-board because then we don't have the discussion of 3,000 people, it's 200. And so in the e-board meeting, we'll have one before, maybe 2 actually, before the election. And in any of those, it can come back around with the e-board members to do another endorsement vote. And then we might have an official stamp on a candidate that the official CA Democrats have endorsed. And then we as a club can then say, okay, we're just going to take the Democrat and like put an effort behind them. We don't have to. If we do collateral or mailers for local candidates, we can decide, are we going to put the face of the state party endorsed candidate on there or not? That's up to us. And then that could be the give when we invite them to come.
Can I ask a personal question about how you feel about that, like, possible division? Because we've seen that before in like federal elections.
Yeah.
Where there's a division between candidates in the Democratic Party, and
Yeah.
then divide votes, right? So how do you feel about that?
I think what happens is that hopefully when candidates back out graciously, and they hopefully direct them in another candidate. Very few times does it go to the final election with like two Democrats. So the party has figured it out. There was some platform changes for us to, because this whole process, because we have this Byzantine endorsement process, there is sometimes a clear winner. So we've done some process changes for not necessarily governor's race, but the rest of the races to get ahead of some of the attacks from the Republicans earlier and put like dollars from the state party into local candidates. I don't know how this is going to shake out for governor because it's just contentious. So, but other races, I'm expecting insurance commissioner.
So, Meredith, one of the things I love about our club is that we are in a really good position to educate Alameda people about their options. And so I really love your idea of maybe seeing how things shake down and inviting the candidates to speak. And, you know, for those of us who are interested in getting certain kinds of questions answered or figuring out what the differences are between the candidates, maybe we could invite membership to suggest questions or whatever. But I think that's really wise. And as like, you know, for how we spend our energy and time, I think it's really up to each of us individually to figure out where we think we could be the most effective, have the most influence, and achieve the greater goal, which is to stop the crazy and then maybe promote something that we care about. But yeah, I'm really excited that you're facilitating some kind of way that we could criteria. What do you guys think of them?
I guess my question, just out of ignorance, like what power do we actually have as a club? Like it sounds like a couple of you are delegates, but I assume you are vote as delegates. It's not connected to the club. Like you're not bound by the club in anything. Like you're just voting by your conscience.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So as a charter club, we have our opportunity to pick who our candidate is. We just have to do it by a certain date before obviously the county party does in April. So that's our power as a club.
And like, do you mean that's the person we put on our postcard, or is there you take that to someone else?
No, we choose to. That person remains in the race to the primary. We have the opportunity to campaign for them. That's on my.
And I want to pause there. So before I joined the club, and I was trying to figure out who should I vote for, I would look to my favorite organizations and see who they endorsed, right? And for me, that would be like, what are my local Dems? Who do they? I'm not paying attention to this stuff. Who did they endorse? Great. So I see it twofold, like in a different way. Also, is that it's also like going to be powerful in terms of being able to communicate to voters like former me, who just kind of looking at who she should vote for today.
Yeah, because everyone in this room is paying attention. And a lot of people aren't. And so they'll look at like a mailer we send and be like, oh, this is who the Democratic Party is.
This is Alameda Democrats, and it's going to have local candidates, but they can also have anybody that we want to do for any higher office. And any higher office, we can inform the votes if we do it before they do of the delegates at each level. And that's another way we have a little power. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to listen to us, but.
Sometimes the central committee will endorse a different candidate than we do. Say each mailer the same day in mail, and it's like.
But we also decide, like, let's say the state party says this is who we're endorsing. We decide as a club whether we're going to follow that endorsement or not. You can't endorse against it, but we can be like, that person.
generally good tactic not to make a counter endorsement after a parent one did. If you do it before, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You can do it. There's nothing that's absolutely can't. It's just like we don't want to. Plus, if we want to work with like other clubs and organize with them, it gets a little hairy when like, well, we want to pool funds for a mailer, but we all endorse different people. Who are we putting in that mailer?
You have been waiting very patiently. Sorry.
Two questions. One, you mentioned something in April. So my question is around dates. I assume filing deadlines are passed.
March 2nd.
March 2nd, still, they could still, more people could still jump in.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when, do we know when ballots need to be, like, there's a certain date by which ballots are printed and sent and all that. So if people are going to drop out, they would drop out before that date.
Ideally, but like someone may drop out of the race but still be on the ballot.
Right, right, and that's going to create confusion and other stuff. But March 2nd, people can still file.
Yeah.
And then you said something about April. It's
April 9th, if we want to make an endorsement on a statewide or county candidate, it has to be before April 9th.
Because that's when the county.
That's when the county is going to do their endorsement for him.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Plenty of time.
Right. Okay. And then we don't know about when the ballots will go out. And then so that was one about dates. And then the other thing is you did mention pooling with other clubs, not necessarily for the endorsement part, but in terms of inviting these candidates to speak. If they knew they were talking to Alameda and San Francisco on a Zoom, you might get more of the candidates to be willing to come and speak. So that I'll let you guys sort that out.
Yeah, for or speaking spaces, definitely we can partner on collateral mailers, other things. We partner with the county, we partner with the like firefighters, we partner with like sometimes we partner with the candidates themselves. We'll endorse the candidate, and then the candidate themselves can't afford a citywide mailer. We can't afford it on their own. We'll pull our money because they're endorsed. So
I just meant before you get to that. So if you're going to have people come speak before deciding about endorsements and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Questions. I'm just going to run really quickly through super fast and then we'll turn it over to our special guests. We will send this slide deck around after, but we are also voting on a lot of great candidates for lieutenant governor, second in command, but also oversees the UC system. Insurance commissioner who sets the rates and negotiates with insurance companies. Pretty important considering the wildfires and healthcare right now. State superintendent, who's going to manage the public school system. We have a couple people running unopposed, Dr. Shirley Weber, Rob Bonta, Malia Cohen. The Board of Equalization is a group that sets property tax policy, like manage it, like oversees taxes and tax policy to make sure it is equitable and good for consumers.
Every time they're voting,
yeah. They help manage taxes. Okay, so those are going to be the statewide offices. But yeah, we can talk more about this further in the coming weeks over email. If anyone wants to come join the campaigns committee and help us set some criteria for how we're going to evaluate these candidates and invite some of them to come speak, come talk to me. Right. We are very lucky to have a special guest today, Alysse Castro, our county superintendent. She is up for re-election, but she has also been doing a ton of work. We have seen locally and nationally everything that is coming at public education right now. And so it's so wonderful to have her here to talk about some of the work she's doing for our students, right? We're community building. All right, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there folks on Zoom? Is that why I'm miking? Oh, hi, folks on Zoom. Sorry, I think you're going to get the back of my head. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, better peripheral vision from there. I'm Alysse Castro. I am your Alameda County Superintendent of Schools. I am also a fellow Alamedan. I spent many years as a principal here in Alameda Unified. I was for 10 years in Alameda Unified, briefly as the instructional vice principal at Alameda High, and then for 8 years over all of our alternative programs. So in various configurations, because we're always wearing many hats in a small constrained district like Alameda. I was the principal of Island High for 8 years. That included pregnant and parenting teens. Also, I think independent study for 6 years, adult education for 4 years, ASTE, the early college high school for a few years. And I also pinch hit on district-wide credit recovery and occupational programs, which was all a great start for learning about the role. But my real passion place has been working with our most vulnerable young people. And during my time at Island, I had a number of students who were in and out of juvenile hall or in and out of Camp Sweeney, which is our long-term boys ranch here in Alameda County. And I became intensely curious about what was happening in that space. And I mean, at this point, I'm very comfortable just telling people I'm a flagrant jail abolitionist, and yet I go to juvenile hall all the time. I work there by choice. And it's really because I had this experience of seeing young people coming in and out of these systems and being like, it seems like there's a fundamental promise there. But like, if we make you go there, we should promise that you're going to come out better. But when you think about it, like that's true of school too. Like we make you go there. We should be able to promise that you're going to not just come out better, but like have a good day. Like having a good day matters. And so I really followed my kids through the door of juvenile hall and had the opportunity to briefly work at the Alameda County Office of Education. And I had, known of county offices of education through my whole career, but always just been like, what is the point of this bureaucracy? And I will be the first to tell you that if we were making up an education system from scratch, we would not make counties a stop along the way. But we did make counties a stop along the way in the 1880s when we wrote the California Constitution, and we built in county superintendents as constitutional officers. So, the universe adapts to respond to whatever is available. And the legislature just keeps giving county superintendents more and more responsibilities to fill in the cracks. So we directly serve the kids who can't be served by any other school district. That's the kids in juvenile hall, the kids who've been expelled by their school system. We also, and while I was first at the county office, I was also teaching school resource and finance at UC Berkeley in the Principal Leadership Institute, and rolling out the local control funding formula, which is the state's no longer brand new funding formula. County superintendents are responsible for oversight of all school district finances. Just like a teenager, I have lots of responsibility, but no authority over their finances. And then we provide all manner of additional services and supports to expand the capacity of school districts. And our focus is to expand the capacity of school districts to serve their most vulnerable youth. So, yeah.
Do you want to ask me a question?
Not at all.
You mentioned that you have oversight with no authority. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. I'm a school finance nerd, so I sometimes have a hard time finding the right level of detail on this. So you work with me on the right level of detail. You all know that you elect school board members in your local community, and the school board members appoint their superintendents. And between those two entities, they come up with a budget for their school district. But ultimately, the money really comes from the state. The state sets the laws. They're the state schools, and we just superintend them. We hold them in trust. That's why they're called trustees. So the state sets the rules, the state gives the money, And like all money, it comes with strings attached. They have to follow a set of rules. But within that set of rules, they're supposed to have complete local control about how they execute on the state's 8 priorities. So it's basically my job and a job done by my team to verify that they did, in fact, through a whole set of systems, that they did do all the things they're supposed to do with those dollars, and that they're following all the standard accounting practices, and that they're turning in incredibly complex reports and projections 3 times a year, following all of these cycles. So it's oversight. And it's really like, I hesitate to say this because checks and balances aren't exactly working for us anywhere else in government right now, but it really is a sort of checks and balances system where they make the decisions and they're responsible for carrying out their local plans and their local budgets. But there is a second pair of eyes to make sure that not just that they didn't screw up the math, but that like they're not, because ultimately if something goes horribly awry, then you hit a payroll crisis, and we're there to not let that happen.
So you talk about not having the ability to issue some kind of consequences or accountability, I think is what I took away from what you're saying. But it sounds like perhaps do you publicly word, like if I'm a school that you're the superintendent over and I don't meet those,
I write a lot of letters.
What happens? Are you going to report out? Are you going to
Yeah.
cut my budget? Like,
So,
what authority? What is? How do you prioritize your accountability mechanism? What does that look like for you?
So mostly it's a lot of poking. I write, no, very publicly. Some of it's very public. So like every year the schools have to adopt a local control accountability plan and a matched budget. And they do that every spring. That's like the May, June cycle. Those are public documents, publicly adopted. And then they come to our team and we publicly review them and publicly give, like, the feedback is all public. And then ultimately we have to approve or disapprove. So there's usually some behind the scenes back and forth of like, here's a 30-page report of the things you got to fix. And some of them are like, you should fix them. And some of them are, you got to fix them. And then I publicly approve the budgets. And for the last few years, there's been a few that I've had to issue a conditional approval. And ultimately, if I couldn't approve the budget, then there's a whole legal process where like you got to go back and try again with a enforcement committee and all of that.
Thank you so much. I don't want to
no
get into that too much, but I
am nerdy about this. I kind of like it. Yeah. And then there's a couple times a year called first interim and second interim that we do check-ins, and those are also public letters.
Thank you so much.
Sure. So, I mean, right now, like, I'm just going to highlight a couple of things, and then you tell me what you want to know, and you can break in with questions at any time. I mean, right now, basically, everyone wants to know the state of schools in our collapsing democracy. And I feel like maybe I should open with, it's not as bad as you think. That, frankly, many of us have heard about like the closure of the Federal Department of Education. It's not going to change anything in California, really. I mean, it's in California, in everywhere in the US, education is a state function more than it is a federal one. And we are well positioned to not just weather that change, but in some ways may come out better as a result of it. Of like, I don't really want the federal opinion about education and the federal strings attached to education dollars right now. But for now, we have not seen major funding changes. We've just seen a lot of fear and anxiety. And so a lot of my role has really been in what I would call bravery support for superintendents, to like remind them that they don't need to change their policies proactively, that in California, our Constitution is very, very clear that education is a right for everyone in this state, whether they are a citizen or not, regardless of their immigration status, their residency status, their gender identity, their parents' education. These are all, we have very strong rights to education in California, and we lean into those. So that's, it's not that it doesn't keep us busy trying to keep that alive and well, but we are legally very well protected. And so this is a place where as citizens, we can continue to show up and remind our school board members and our superintendents that we don't really care who we piss off in DC, that we would like them to stand behind our local values. Another thing that everybody wants to talk about is money. You know, as I was growing up, California was like in the bottom 5 for education funding. It used to be great. Then we Prop 13'd, and then we were in the bottom 5. We made huge strides, largely through the pandemic years, in increasing the funding in public education in California. It is a place where Governor Newsom has extraordinarily strongly made good on his promises. And now we're right in the middle of the pack in terms of funding, but we're not in the middle of the pack in terms of cost of living. So that is still a struggle. We are not in the same position as a New York or a New Jersey, which are the 2 top funded states for education. In those states, the average per pupil funding is around, these are last year's numbers, around $24,000 per pupil. In California, our average is about $15,000 per pupil. And that is what brings us to the incredible tension that you're seeing here in Alameda, as well as across the state, around education funding and the labor issues that it creates. Because the money comes from the state, and it comes at approximately $15,000 per kid. There's not a lot you can do to change that. And then you divide it by the number of teachers you need, and that pretty much uses your budget. So we're in a really, I think, a really hard moment where I'm extremely sympathetic to CTA's statewide bargaining approach and their "We Can't Wait" campaign, but it's about trying to pressure the state to fund education differently, but conducting that fight at the local level, which doesn't make any more money appear at the local level. If it's of interest to the group, I will not answer questions about what's going on in AUSD specifically. I am both not an expert and I shouldn't be speaking outside the table, but I have a lot of knowledge about the issue in general, and I'm happy to answer questions that aren't quite specific to the Alameda Unified situation. I thought that was going to happen. Tell me your name.
My name's Rowan.
Rowan?
I'm actually a student at USD.
Great.
And a little bit of a shift, but my question was about how in Oakland and Berkeley, they recently passed the youth growth initiative that started last election, did a similar thing in Albany. So I was wondering, obviously it's not exactly your duty, that's mostly for register our voters, but in your capacity as superintendent, would you support a similar initiative?
Yeah, I'm pro youth vote. And actually I'm very close with a former Oakland board member, Sam Davis, who was a big champion of that. And we've actually had a little talk about what that might look like in other contexts, but needs to be youth led. So awesome.
Yeah, but just generally, I guess I had mentioned it, but what have you done, as superintendent to kind of support youth vote efforts in the past and do plans in the future?
This has not been an issue in which I have particularly led. I would say that where I'm at is really focused on infrastructure building for schools as centers of wellness, in terms of community schools, school-based health, extended learning, universal pre-K, all of which I see as building the infrastructure for youth to be able to do what youth lead to do. And then, call me when you actually need a superintendent to push something across a bureaucratic line.
This might be a little bit off topic as well, but I'm curious to know your thoughts on charter schools versus public education. I know that in some states, I'm not exactly sure about California, but a lot of parents are sending their kids to charter schools versus the public school simply because of class factors, sure. So how would you argue that public education is like the right path for local?
That's a hot potato question.
Yeah, but I am fine with it because I have an opinion and something to say. Like I am completely sympathetic to why individual families and sometimes individual educators choose a charter school option. And I'm even sympathetic to why members of the legislature looked at the morass of public education and said, we can't solve that. We just got to like create an out, a weird loophole. But education is infrastructure for society, and infrastructure has to work for everyone. We conducted a multi-decade long experiment as a society in whether you can use the tools of competition of capitalism to compete your way out of equity dilemmas. And I mean, it really ended in Zuccotti Park with a realization that you cannot capitalism your way out of equity dilemmas. And that's the strategy upon which charters as an alternative are built. And like the way I see it is, if I look out that window and I see smoke in a building, I need to be able to pick up the phone and call the fire department, and the closest fire department has to be the right one to put out that fire. And when I send a kid to school, the school at the end of the block has to be the right one. It has to be good enough. And, you know, the folks who are, I think there are folks who are really invested in charters for like really legitimate good reasons. And then I think that there's carpetbaggers who are really invested in them fundamentally for privatization reasons. But either way, they both use the language of choice. And the problem with choice is in this setting, when you actually ask yourself the question of like, what's the opposite of choices? It's guarantees. And that's actually the way the public education system has to work, is it has to work on a guarantee that regardless of your zip code or your neighborhood, that the school down the street is going to work. Meredith.
So I am a public school parent. I have a TK and a second grader.
Thank you.
The policy where schools don't get paid if the student doesn't show up and is sick or on vacation.
Attendance based, yes.
What is your thought on that? And we wanted to get rid of it. How would we do it?
Oh, I mean, this is one of those things that's like really simple on the surface and only, I don't even understand why it's so hard as policy. And I've been doing a lot of policy work these days. No, it's a dumb idea. Attendance-based is a dumb idea. And the majority of states do enrollment-based, because the reality is you sign up a kid, you have a space for them in a classroom, you pay the teacher, you pay for the infrastructure, whether they show up on any given day or not. I think that there's people who believe, and this is like related to the capitalism baked in sin, is the like puritanical baked in sin, that if we somehow like don't create a financial incentive, people won't do the right thing, that like school officials will stop trying to get kids to come to school if they don't get paid on a per pupil basis. Like that just doesn't pan out. And in fact, it doesn't pan out. Like it's provable that in states that don't use this method, they don't have different attendance. Making that actual change involves getting a legislator who will carry the bill. And everything in one of the things that's come with this job is an amazing new view on legislation. And like we've written several bills and they're now laws, and it's very cool. And I'm learning a lot about this, but like nobody wants to touch education finance. And partly it's because you can't just like touch one thing, like even something that simple and straightforward, like opens the whole Pandora's box of everything else in education funding, including that anything you do that would raise funding for a particular district. So let's say, like, if we eliminated that rule, actually Oakland, which has more chronic absenteeism than Alameda, Oakland would probably benefit from it more than Alameda. And if it's one pie, then what you're actually doing is slightly shifting that pie towards a district like Oakland from a district like Alameda in the immediate term, unless you add more to the pie. And nobody likes it when I say this, but in California, we already give between 40 and 50% of our budget to public education. And particularly in the Trump era, I'm way more terrified about what's happening on the other side of the budget, because as the Medicaid, which is what holds up all of social services dollars, and the threat to like immigrants in that space and the threat to our overall budget and our social services budget in that space, like, I'm not sure this is the year to try to negotiate any more money for the education side, but it is totally the right answer.
Do you have
We're
a
here.
candidate you like in the state superintendent of public instruction race?
I mean, I like all of them to have a drink with, but I have not really formed an opinion on this one yet. Yeah. I also that, if you want some really inside baseball, the governor has a proposal in trailer bill that would change the role of the state superintendent of public instruction, which is super nerdy, but actually makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. I'm in favor of this change. But the benefit of it for me is also that it would make the state superintendent of public instruction much more of a policy person and not so much the person who's heading the California Department of Education. That would then become more of an appointed position through the state board, which I think would make the whole system function better. But yeah, I haven't made up my mind.
So can you share with us what are one or two of your major challenges, and how do you see the community supporting you?
Thirst was my major challenge. So I think that right now there's a really strong challenge. We have 5 districts in Alameda County at impasse, and 6 districts in fiscal distress, and they're not entirely the same districts. The fiscal distress comes more than anything from declining enrollment. It comes from the fact that we, as a state, are reducing in the number of children we have, and in the coastal corridors and our more expensive communities, there's a systematic decline in the number of young people. And so that's not about people choosing public education or not choosing it. It's just a demographic shift. And demographic shifts happen on these nice gradual lines, but school districts are lumpy. We built the number of schools and classrooms that we needed at the moment they were built. So they tend to reflect the demographic needs of 100 years ago and 50 years ago and 40 years ago, and not of today. And many of the labor dilemmas and the labor challenges are tied up in that same issue, that we really can't, in public education, optimize for cost. We can't really be efficient unless we're able to like open and close classrooms as we need them, and open and close schools as we need them. And nobody likes that. And so in some ways, that's the thing that I feel like I most need from a community, from all of us in the community, is to recognize that part of supporting public education is recognizing that, like, this is an infrastructure problem. It's not a people problem. It's not a people are greedy problem. It's not a people are incompetent problem. It's not that we didn't plan right. This is an infrastructure problem. And we have to tackle it with some level of comprehension and compassion and respect for the fact that everybody in every place in this is a little harmed by change, because nobody wants to see their kid not go to the school they went to or have to shift who's teaching at the school down the street. And nobody wants to be the teacher who has to make that move either, or the principal who has to make that cut. Nobody wants to be the superintendent who has to propose closing that school. That is really my biggest ask as Democrats, as the kind of activists and educated community members who turn out to the Veterans Hall to hear spiels like this, to help inject some of that into the community conversation, that we can be all really good people, that we have a shared public responsibility to figure out how to spread these resources and not yell louder about somebody having, nobody screwed up. Nobody screwed up. Nobody's being mean. Nobody's being terrible. It's just a bad situation. And if we want public education to work, we have to talk about it like that, because we have to share our faith that this is a shared infrastructure that requires a shared solution. What's your name? Mary Claire, thank you.
And maybe outside your area or whatever, but people protecting the children coming out of schools. And then secondly, you said something about schools becoming centers of health care or something like that. Just curious that with this idea of schools needing to close because of the infrastructure problem, what are the possibilities of those schools becoming more like community centers where there could be adult education or community or medical clinics or something else, given that the physical facilities are there? Are there restrictions that would preclude them expanding their role in the community? So those are two areas. What about ICE showing up at the schools, and what could be a vision of these schools in the future possibly?
Okay, so I'll take the second one first. That in many ways, like our pandemic dividend is really our California government looking around and saying, you know, it really doesn't make any sense to have all these services that we want for young people, but to have them be scattered all over the place. Why don't we, it's like, it took sending all the kids home for people to realize, you know, maybe we should bring them all back together and put all the things we want them to have in one place. And so that's like a commonsensical, but very slow to happen change of actually saying that we are going to invest in, say, after school programs, and that we are not going to use these buildings for 6 hours a day and then send kids home, that we're going to have them be places that take care of kids for more years of their life and more hours of the day and more than just their frontal lobes, but more food, more enrichment, more behavioral health, mental health, emotional support services. You can have all kinds of things. Yeah. And if a school has to close, it's still a community resource, but here's where we have to get like pragmatic, and it's a community resource, but it's actually owned by the school district. And the point of closing it was for the school district to save money. So it has to be closed in a way that actually saves the school district money. And that's, you know, that is really a challenge. So we see places, you know, when I managed 7 school moves when I was a principal here in Alameda. And so for a while, you know, when we were over at the Woodstock campus, I had when Old Alameda High, when historic was under construction, we moved adult out of there, double shifted that campus. So I had Island there in the morning and adult there in the afternoon and the evening. We had a charter that was renting some space there. We had, we turned the school-based health center into also being a legal aid clinic in the evening for our immigrant adult ed students. Like, you can do all sorts of things with these spaces. But, you know, there's like Oakland, they closed a school on the east side very, very famously, very controversially a few years ago, the Parker campus, and it's been turned into an adult education and community services hub. It's a great hub, but it costs OUSD more to run it as a hub and maintain all of the services and hire somebody to be a real estate manager and all of that essentially than it was running it as a school. So there needs to be some way of, and there are communities where it's worked, where like cities and counties have partnered to that, but the school, yes, some entity, yes. Yeah, frankly, and every one of my school boards is exhausted and overwhelmed and at the end of their rope, and I need them to just be able to focus on running schools. But there are ways, there are coalitions, joint powers agreements, et cetera. And for your first question, yeah, of course we have kids and families who are afraid to come to school. And we have folks who really have a lot that they want to do about that. You know, our office has been able to do something that I'm fairly proud of, which, you know, for us, getting to school is not political. And so there are existing infrastructures like walking school buses and safe routes to school, and communities who have always, maybe in neighborhoods that are a little less safe than this one, there are some existing structures for adults to stand on street corners and just make sure that kids are moving safely to school. And at this point, we have been able to provide lots and lots of training and resource and yellow vests and whistles and clipboards and all of that for any school that would like to organize volunteers into safe routes for schools. And I hope that there are some folks here who are working on that. And I know that we have communities in Oakland, Hayward, and in the unincorporated areas of Alameda County that would really love to have to have your eyes. And
where do we go for those resources?
Let me follow up.
Okay.
Usually it goes through the school. So if you are not already affiliated with a particular school, I'm going to have to figure out the right way to recruit you.
And are there any policies in place already, or that could be put in place? Like there's, no drug dealing within 200, whatever it is.
Oh yeah, we have those laws in California. We have those laws in California.
Yeah.
What are they? They're just unenforceable. I mean, if the feds don't think that our laws matter.
Those are already in place.
Yeah, they're in place, and they got re-strengthened in the most recent legislative cycle as something that State Superintendent of Instruction, Tony Thurmond, his office has been very strong on this.
And he is running for governor.
And he is running for governor.
You are going to be in the ballot in June.
I am.
Do you have anyone running against you yet?
At this moment, I do not.
Okay.
I also have received the endorsement of the California Teachers Association, as well as basically every county elected and most of our legislative delegation. I'm both doing a good job, and I'm working 65 hours a week, killing myself to do it. I don't know why anyone else would want this job. But
exactly the way it is. Really okay.
I would be okay with that too, but it's March 6th is the filing deadline, and we'll see what happens.
And we only vote for you in the primary, or do we vote?
So my office is a true primary.
Okay.
So if if somebody gets 50% of the vote, which is pretty much inevitable with one or two candidates, then it's over in June. If there were more candidates, you could expect the top two would go to November, which is different from the county school board race, where it actually is over in June regardless of, but you don't have this seat is off cycle. So this seat, we elected our county board member 2 years ago, and we will there for a 4-year term. That's Angela Normand will be in her seat. Angela Normand will be in her seat for another.
March 2nd, that's the final deadline. Because I thought Meredith said March 2nd.
I thought it was the 2nd, but maybe it's the 6th.
I think it's the 6th.
Okay.
I'd love it if it were the 2nd.
Maybe the state offices and the county offices are different.
I could be wrong. And I would be so excited to be wrong on this particular one. But that is so excited.
Are there any races you are endorsing yet or gone into so far?
Oh, there's almost nobody else running right now. I am supporting all of the incumbent county school board members, but none of them are in this area. So that's Cheryl Cook-Callio out in the Tri-Valley, Aisha Knowles in Central County, and Ana Vasudeo is currently the only candidate for the seat for the North County because Joaquin Rivera is retiring.
Statewide, I say this is a delegate mention for endorsements.
Aisha Wahab. Oh. I'm a big fan of Aisha Wahab.
There's governor race, there's state insurance commission.
I have not developed an opinion on any of the state level races. I mean, I have people that I like, but I haven't been systematic in getting to know the people I don't know yet. So it doesn't feel, I'm not attached to any of them.
Great. Well, if anyone has any other questions, you can send Alysse's information. But thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks, friends on Zoom.
All right. Are there any last questions or thoughts, especially from some of the people who are new here? Anything that's been talked about today? Yes. Well, as I mentioned, please keep an eye out on our email, our newsletter. Our next meeting will be March 11th. We meet the second Wednesday of every month here, and that will probably be another candidate discussion. Because as I mentioned, if we want to endorse, we have to do it before the
So when we were talking about candidates who, too many of them, is there a possibility we send a town hall here and invite a candidate? Can you repeat the question?
Oh yes, the question was, would we invite candidates running to come here to speak to us? Kind of like Alysse did, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And a town hall, like, can any intersectional groups come and, like a variety of people from the area? Like one way to think of, really is difficult for me is the apathy that I'm encountering. Like you were talking about, people just don't know what's going on. And it seems like a real great way to communicate from, everybody who's here, and then that goes on and on, by influence. And I see that as the real power of the organization as well. Soft power. Yeah. So,
No, that's a really good point. We should, yes, at some of our candidate meet and greets, or when we look at electing them, where this will be really big is when in the general election in November, we're going to be electing a new mayor, new city council member, new school board members.
And that's where we really go big on people come out to hear the candidates, answer questions and things like that. So would love to like have more input on like who we should be reaching out to that we're not. Yeah. It's a great idea though. I wish Wyeth were here. She is like a prowess at coalition building.
One of our most attended meetings are endorsement meetings, and then people come and take it so they get to vote. So we get the most people showing up for candidate forums. It's when people want to get involved or know the local government. The rest of the time we're doing the work of just keeping the party going and doing our duty as Democrats. The locals love to, we're the one forum.
Which is a very
Usually the
process
first.
because we get to know them, ask the questions up front.
We did that at that bar, right, with city council. Last go around.
Yeah.
There was
Did
like-
at High Street, yeah.
The High
Yeah.
Street events are, yeah.
Yeah, Greg Board and
Yeah.
Michelle. And
Yep. We do with our school board as well. Yeah.
And we usually go first. The League of Women Voters and Posts do their forum too, but
Oh, yeah.
you guys for coming. Nice meeting you, yes. I just realized.